Did you know, along with a small group of um, highly skilled executives and board members, we have people like Rex Tillerson, who is the CEO of ExxonMobil, who commands over 80,000 employees worldwide. Howard Schultz, CEO of Starbucks, he commands 149,000 in his corporation alone. This just an These are examples of CEOs with great authority over their employees, and their decisions and directives greatly impact these people in their lives way more than how a government official's decisions would impact. Plus, the directives and decisions made by these employers goes way broad into affecting people outside the corporation itself. This includes investors, shareholders, as well as the public society. But how legitimate is this authority? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Norbert Lukuvi, and today I am going to be critiquing the book Public Capitalism, The Political Authority of Corporate Executives by Christopher McMahan. And just as we saw in Fixing the Game, within the book Public Capitalism, McMahan tries to give us a comparison in order to make us understand the theory even more better. According to McMahon, public capitalism, he tries to set out this task of trying to make the reader not think of corporations and the executives the same way we usually used to think of them. This includes incorporating corporations as private organizations and the executives as the agents of the shareholders who own that corporation. However, instead, McMahon asks us to think of these corporations as government agencies and the executives as the public officials. And because you're thinking of corporate executives as public officials, then their authority is just as problematic as the ones we find with government officials. And McMahon says that this authority is not legitimate, which is the main thesis of his book. Because according to McMahon, the authority exercised by corporate executives can only be legitimate if and only if it constitutes a form of political authority. What he means by this is that the same way how a political authority is legitimized not only by the laws and regulations that they set in place to shape, well, the country that they're in, but they're also legitimized because beyond that they're able to also promote the public good. The public good in this case being transportation, health, jobs for the economy, and so forth. So what McMahon is saying, the authority is not legitimate because their actions and authority is only directed towards making profit for their shareholders, but not beyond that towards the public good. Now let's stop here for a second. It seems like when McMahon is speaking about legitimacy, to me, it seems like he's speaking about moral obligations and responsibility. In this context, I find it hard to compare the two regarding one is more private and the other is more public, just because the moral obligation of the government is way different from the moral obligation of corporate executives. But then the moral obligation of corporate executives is merely just to increase profit for their shareholders, because that's what they're hired to do. It's the same way as the government. That's what they're hired to do, to help the country. Take this example in consideration. So let's say I hired you to mow my lawn. And I am paying you to mow my lawn. So your moral obligation is to do what I am paying you to do, because that is right. So what I wouldn't want to see is paying you to mow my lawn, yet during the time that you're supposed to be mowing my lawn, you go about and mow the whole streets, like the whole neighborhood all everyone else wants. But that's not what I'm paying you to do. So technically, your moral obligation is to mow my lawn and not everyone else's, unless they're paying you as well. So in short, which is why I say for corporate executives, that is their obligation because that is what they're supposed to do, which is why. So that's the first argument I feel doesn't make sense. Another argument McMahan brings about legitimacy is his comparison between the difference between directive power and legitimate power. So according to McMahan, government issues directives, laws, or regulation to give a political corporation a certain shape, as I mentioned earlier. But then it's the same way as corporations give raises, bonuses, as well as punishment such as firing or suspension to employees who don't conform to the laws of the corporation. So this whole setting of rules, according to McMahan, is called directive power, and directive power is not legitimate power. But he gives a suggestion how directive power can be legitimate. So according to McMahon, for an authority to be legitimate, the people who are being directed from the authority should be willing to comply with the decisions made, not just because of fear for losing their jobs or fear of breaking the law or fear of, anything happening to them, but they should be willing to comply to these directives and decisions, even if these fears didn't exist, which once again kind of goes back to how the comparison between government and the corporate executives does not work. Because within the government, the directors are going to make decisions by the essence of public good. So, yes, there are no employee benefits for the people of the country to agree with the government officials because it is the public good, so it's for them. However, when we talk about corporate executives, when an employee is looking for a job, they, other than high-class CEOs, I guess, or high-class managers, a normal employee would not research that, or, taking into account like me being a normal employee, I would not research the type of decisions that these executives make within the corporation. Like the basic thing I would research obviously is the pay wage, the hours, let's say how many holidays you're given. So it's hard for me to comply to decisions that they make without these regulations being set forth. Another problem I find with this comparison is that it's really hard to compare public morality and private morality, because that's pretty much what he's trying to do. So if you take this into context, it's pretty much saying that McMahon, what he's saying is that the authority made by corporate executives can never be legitimate. However, he contradicts this later on by saying that the decisions in a corporation can actually be legitimate if they encompass a liberal democracy. So let's stop there again, because this is highly confusing. A liberal democracy highly depends on a voting system. So if we were to place a liberal democracy into the private corporations, then this would cause havoc because decisions would be taken too long to go through, as everyone would be voting in terms of which decision to push through, which decision to not to push through. As well as, on top of that, a liberal democracy cannot work with a private organization because within a public government, you can never find full compliance of all entities within it, which is why public officials will always have someone running against them in elections, as well as members of the society voting for the other party. So, as well, on top of that, taking into aspect, if we employ a liberal democracy within a private organization, then technically it wouldn't be up to the corporate executives to push through a decision. It would be the employees of that corporation to push through the decision. So then that defeats the purpose of authority given to corporate executives. Public capitalism by itself, I would say, was quite a good read, but however, I feel like the ideas of, in terms of legitimate authority, cannot comply with the way corporations are set up just because of the way how market governance works. See, with McMahon, he argues that corporations should go further than making profit, but instead of just making profit, they should go further with that and promote the public good, i.e., use these profits to make the public good. But you see, the way how corporations are set up in the market, every corporation is fighting each other in trying to survive within the market, and thus trying to make as much profit and as much revenue as they can to grow and outbid the other competition. Now, now, if they were to use these profits every time for public good, then there would be no profits left to grow and survive within the competition of the market. So, in short, I would like to say I feel like a corporation authority cannot is legitimate in its own way because it is doing its moral obligation while the executives are doing the moral obligation of producing profits for the shareholders. And in turn, what these shareholders decide to do with this profit, they may go out and do a public good or they may not. However, how they decide how to spend this profit is simply up to them. But in terms of the executives, I would feel that the authority is quite legitimate. So no offense to anyone who might have gone to read Public Capitalism, but I feel like there are only two reasons why McMahon wrote this book. One, it's either he belongs to a union and wants to give employees more power in terms of their workforce and the decisions they make, or the second reason could be he really just wanted to write a book and put it out there for everyone to read. Thank you very much for the presentation. I hope it somewhat made sense, but in case you need any clarification, please don't be shy to ask the other pretty looking boy who looks exactly like me right there.